So today we're starting day 2 for part-time. We'll be introducing CSS, we'll be introducing GitHub, and Git flow. So these are really important concepts, and CSS is a important technology. So we worked with HTML. HTML is nice, but the problem with HTML is that the website doesn't look good. From what you have noticed, the website is very plain. It doesn't look nice. And most of you have seen other websites that look really nice. If you go to any website in the internet, they all look really pretty and nice. And every website is unique. So how do you make that happen? And you do that by using CSS. But before we start CSS, I would like to introduce Git and GitHub. So we'll start with Git. I know the lesson CSS is first, but we'll start with GitHub. The reason for that is we will use GitHub to kind of like work with the CSS. So it's better to introduce Git and then get into CSS, and then I can show you how to get the files and put the files in GitHub. So let's get started. I'll just do quick slideshow on GitHub. On Git. I think you watched this video that I put up on the training material. But if you haven't, we'll just go here. So what is Git? So Git is an open source version control. Is a system, is a technology that's not connected to anyone. It's an open source. Someone created it, so it is open source. It's free, and you could install it to your computer. So Git is a software that can run locally in your computer, and it could also run online on websites like GitHub and other websites like Bitbucket. Um, Git. The main job of Git is that it keeps track of the changes of your files. So if you have ever worked with Microsoft Word or something like that, and you wanted to save different versions of your, let's say, of your paper, you save, let's say, you say paper 1, paper 2, paper 3, and then you have a bunch of copies. Maybe you worked with images or something like that. You save different images so that you could have a backup later on. Let's say if you mess up, then you could go back. Sometimes Microsoft Word will not let you go back all the way to let's say like in the middle of your work. So in that same way, when you code in and you're building a software, it's really hard to keep track of what's happening. A lot of times, most of the time when you're building a software, you're working with a team. You're working with if it's a big company, you're working with hundreds of people, and you guys are working on one software. And you could imagine how many problems can come up by someone working on, let's say, the navigation, and you're working on the navigation and they didn't communicate, and now you have a problem, conflicts and issues. So that's where Git comes. So it keeps track of who changed what. So if you change one letter in your software, in your code, it will keep track of that one letter, and it will say so and so changed that letter. So that's the main job of Git. And you could always go back and forth, so you could change the things you did, and you could go forward. So one of the main things that to keep in mind is that when we're using Git, we have to use the terminal. So the terminal might look really scary for a lot of people. If you have never used the terminal, it kind of looks scary, but in reality, it is a very easy thing to use. And you will see after maybe like a couple of months, you'll realize what I'm saying. But at the beginning, it kind of looks a little intimidating because it looks like you're actually hacking the computer, because that's what hackers do. They use terminal, and they basically try to hack the computers. But the terminal is, you use a specific commands. You're not going to use a way like, you're not going to write a code most of the time in the terminal. You'll use specific commands that already defined. If you have those commands and you write them down, and you write down the description of what it does, then it's easy to use the terminal. So don't worry about it. I'll show you how to use the terminal, everything, and it will become secondhand. It will become something that you use every day. So so if you have a Windows computer, a lot of times people think the command line, the command prompt of your computer is a terminal. It's not terminal. So Windows has issue with connecting to the Linux kernel, which is a, the Linux is a system, is an operating system that was built for developers in mind, and it helps you kind of like access the core of the computer basically. On Mac, on Apple, they use that system and they build from that system, so it's easy for developers to work with the Mac. But in Windows, it's really hard for you to work with tools that Windows gives you. So command prompt is not a terminal. PowerShell is not a terminal. So I'll show you some of the built-in things that you will use, and also I'll show you the built-in phrases in the terminal. But I will show you also some of the things that you could use, commands that you will use every day when you're in this school. So these are some of the commands that we will use almost every day. The first command is git init, as you can see here. Git init basically creates a folder. So when you hear repository, it means a folder that is that has properties. It has a hidden code that keeps track of the changes. So Git, what it does is it creates a folder, and then which we call repository, and then after that it puts a code in that repository which keeps track of the changes you're doing within that folder. So if you put files in that folder, it will say, okay, I see about 20 files that you haven't tracked. Do you want to track? And then I'll show you how to do that. And it will ask you to track. And if you track it, then it will say, okay, I'm tracking now. I want to, if you make any changes, I will know. There's also git clone, which is copying another folder, another repository, which we say repo. So these are like techno phrases where we say repository. We just mean like a folder or a directory. So from now on, if I say repository, it just means a folder. So repository, which is a shorten for repo. There's also git add, which allows you, and there's a git add dot. Git add allows you to add your files on what you're working on in the Git system. So you're just saying, okay, let's keep track of this, and you just add it. There's also git commit. Git commit means you made the changes, now you want to stage it. So you made the changes, you add to the Git system. Now you want to prepare it for another place. You want to send it to another place. So you want to send it to another repository. So now you commit it. So, and we will learn that committing your code. There's also git status, which you could use to see the status of your file. So is it being tracked? Is it not being tracked? What is happening? So if you say git status, it will give you a information. There's a git push, which allows you to send your code to a remote repository. So if you want to send it to let's say GitHub, which is an online repository, or if you want to send it to, let's say if you're working with a company, they will tell you before you leave work, you have to push your code. So pushing your code means you send your code and push it in their repository, in their system. There's also git pull, which means is the opposite. You pull on a remote repository. You basically get code from a remote repository, but you have to have access to it, and also the repository you have has to match with the repository that the remote computer has. So those are some of the commands that we will use. They will become secondhand. You'll just keep using it every day, and we will learn how to use them today. So there's also GitHub. So GitHub and Git are totally two different things. So Git is a open source system that was created by, I think, the creator of Linux, the guy who created the system, the operating system Linux, and it's open source. So you could download it, you could put it on your computer. But then there's a GitHub. GitHub is a website that you could go to. You could go to github.com, and it's a place that people save their code. It's a place that people store their code. It's like the Instagram of code, basically. So you basically send your code there. Any small code you write, you put it in your GitHub. You have a profile. You can share your profile. For example, when you're looking for a job, they will ask you, give us your GitHub. So you have to give your profile, and they will see if you worked on a code, what you've been working on, what languages do you use most, all that stuff. So, and I'll show you what GitHub looks like and how to use it. So GitHub has repositories, has all the things that you need to basically push your code and save your code there. It also has something called pull request, which is a pull request. Sometimes people say PR. It means you push the code to your remote repository, or to your GitHub, or you push the code to another person. So you could actually make changes to another person's code in GitHub, but you have to request. You have to say, okay, I downloaded your code, I made changes to it. Now I'm doing pull requests. So they have to accept the pull request and merge that changes to their code, to their system. So pull request is basically saying, okay, I made it. I made changes. Here's a request of change. So the word doesn't make sense when you say pull, but it means you're asking for you're requesting for that person to change their code. There's so in our school, Github school, we have something called Git flow. It's basically a way of following certain steps that we prepared for you, that you could follow to submit your code. So the first thing you need to do is you go to our GitHub. When you click today's lesson, today's assignment, it will take you to our GitHub. The first thing you will do is you will fork. Fork basically means copy. So you will take and there's a button that says fork in GitHub, and I'll show you that step by step. So the fork means copy the code from our school, Github school, to your own GitHub. So now it belongs to you. The code belongs to you. The next step would be you'll add a collaborator. The collaborator is a person who can see your changes, the changes you're doing. So that would be probably me. So I'll give you my GitHub handle or my GitHub name, and then you'll put in a place where you can give a person access. So you go to settings, and you put my name in it, and then you'll go from there. So you will give me permission to see what you're working on. Another thing you will do is you will clone your code. So now your code is in GitHub and it's in your account, but it's not in your computer. So you cannot work on it. So you will clone it. Basically, you will copy it to your computer. And then after that, you will create something called branch. Branch basically means so in GitHub or in a Git system, there are different branches. There's a main branch, which is where the code is by default. And then you create different branches. The reason you create different branches is, think of it as like a tree with the branches. The reason you create a branch is because if you make changes, you want to have the changes in a separate place. And then if you're sure that this change is correct, then you will merge. You will take that branch and you will merge it to the main one. Now it's part of the main one. That means that code is done and it's complete. So create a new branch. The way we want you to create your new branch is by your name. So your first name, your last name. So your first name dash your last name, and I'll show you exactly how to do that in a little bit. And then you'll work on your project, and then you will push your code. You basically send your code to GitHub, and then after that you will create a pull request, which will allow me to review your code and see what changes you made, and then after that we'll go from there. So I'll show you all this. It might not make any sense to you, but I'll show you step by step how to do it. So that's it for the slide. Let's just close it. So let's get started on how we're going to do this. The first thing you need to do is let's mute the people who are listening. If we mute, inshallah, we can concentrate easily. So the first thing you need to do is you need to get Git in your computer. So you need to have a terminal in your computer. In Windows, you don't have actual terminal. You have something called, if you could see my screen, you have command line. So you have command prompt. I mean, you have a command prompt. Command prompt is a place that you could write something. You could use a Linux command like cd or something like that. But in reality, it's not terminal. So we will not be using this. We will use this. So let me share this link. This is it's called Git Bash. So if you have Windows, you use Git Bash. If you have Mac, you will use the terminal. So go to your computer, look for terminal. If you can't find it, go to Google, write how to enable terminal in Mac. So that's how you can do it. So if you have Windows, download this. Just click Windows, and or click here for Windows. So install this. When you install it in your computer, this is what you will have. You will have this Git bash is this. So it's a basically small terminal. You can make it bigger. It looks scary, but I will explain what I'm doing. So this is the terminal. This is the one that we will be using all the time. It's basically showing right now. It's in like my root computer, so it's in the root of my computer. So you don't see folders. So what you could do is there are commands that you could use to figure out where you are. For example, if you are for example, somebody took you and they blindfold you and they put you in a mall in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of another city. The first thing you will do is, okay, you need to figure out where you are. So that's what we're doing right now. We're blind, so we need to figure out where we are. So where are we in the computer? What you could do is you could say ls. Ls means list, so it will list all the folders that are in on the files that are in here. So if you say ls, it will tell you, oh, these are all the things that are in this folder that you're in right now. So you could just look at, you can see document here, downloads, you can see some familiar things, pictures. So these are your folders. These are your Windows folders. So what you could do is, if you want to move into one, if you want to go into one folder, you say cd. Cd means change the directory, and then you will name it. So you will say something like picture. So if we move to picture, you could write down the whole name, or you could just write pick just a unique part of the word and tap in your keyboard, hit tab, and it will fill out the word for you. So, and then when you say enter, that means we're in that folder right now. So if we say ls, it will tell us, hey, you have all these folders here. So these are all the things that I have in my pictures. Now we want to go to Gebi School. So we say cd Gebi. Now it's gonna take us to Github School. So Github School has a space here. So if you have a space in your folder, the folder name, it will give you a forward slash, and this one. So that's how you give it space. So you say enter, and it will take us to that folder. Now if we say ls, it will tell us, oh, you have all this in your folder. So we have a couple of, as you can see, these blue ones are the folders. So we were going to go to section 1 because that's where we are right now. So cd to section 1. Section 1. So we're in section 1. So if we say ls, we have CSS tests. So this is one of the things I did. That we have these two full-time, part-time. So now we can create something. So if you want to create a folder in your terminal, you could just say mkdir. That means make directory. So mkdir. So these are commands that you could actually write down and just write something like, use this if you want to make a directory in the terminal. So we say so we say CSS test to something like that. So now we're making a folder named CSS test 2. It doesn't give you any feedback, so that's kind of the things Git does. It doesn't give you any feedback, but if you say ls, it will show that. It will show the CSS test folder. So now we could cd into that and go into it, CSS test, and we're in there. So now what we could do is we could get started and move to GitHub. You understood most of the commands, how to like navigate through the terminal. So we'll go into GitHub. Before we go into GitHub, I just want to ask if you guys have any question about what we did so far. Any questions so far?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
It's not working.
What's not working?
So the folder, when you said cd, then Gebi,
Okay, so if you so basically you have to have that folder already created.
yeah, I did
So,
create it.
oh, you created it. Okay.
Yeah.
So so if you so what you could do is you could say ls and see the folder name. Do you see the folder name there?
No.
When you say ls, what do you see?
Let's says my music, my pictures, my videos.
Okay, so where is the Gibby School folder? Is it in there in the pictures?
No, it's in the desktop.
Is it desktop? Okay. So do you have a desktop within that list?
No, it's not
Okay.
coming up. But
Okay. So you have to go into that folder, the desktop, to get into the Gibby School folder. So if you want to go back, one level, you say cd dot dot, and those dots mean go back one level. So if I say that, it will take me back to section 1. And if I say cd dot dot again, it will take me back another folder. So if you want to go back in reverse, that's how you do. If you want to go back forward, you just say cd and the name of the folder. So section 1.
okay.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, cd desktop. Yeah, cd do cd desktop. I see another question in Slack. What is the difference between Git and GitHub when it comes to using them for coding purposes? So the difference between Git and GitHub is that Git is a system that's already built in this terminal. So it's an open source system that works in the background. It's not something that you will see. But GitHub is actually a website. It's this website, github.com. You go to it. Somebody is you can mute yourself if you're not talking, so that we can have I can explain. So GitHub is actually this website. I have a profile here, as you can see, a lot of things. So we'll go over it. Let me just finish this part of the terminal, and then we'll go to GitHub and I'll explain what it is. So did it work for you? Did you go to desktop?
No, it's not. It's not even showing all the folders.
Okay, it's showing all the folders.
It's not.
Okay. If you maybe go back, maybe say cd dot dot, and then say ls. See where what do you get?
Uh,
What does it show in here? The title here. What does it show?
um, says desktop, security desktop, then C user.
Okay. Also, it says this desktop. So it says your name and the computer name and
Yeah,
desktop. Okay.
yeah.
So now maybe say cd desktop, because
So
this desktop is just a name. It has to have like that dash slash.
okay, yeah. So I have documents, downloads, um, links and music and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But I was looking for the desktop.
You're looking for this.
Maybe I
Okay.
should maybe I should
Let's-
move the folder into the desk into
I'll go back and I'll start from beginning. So mine it starts here. So if I say this, it will show these folders. It doesn't show. Yeah, it shows desktop here for me.
yeah.
So what I would do is
And
I'll just say cd desktop, and then that's where I can go, and then it should show like this right here. It should say slash desktop.
wait, I have slash C slash user.
Okay, so now you went way far. You went right
Yeah.
here. So now say okay, say ls. So let's say,
LS.
and then look for your name. Do you see your name anywhere, or your computer name?
Not to cut you guys off, but it will be easier if he shares his screen so that at least we can see his problem.
Yeah. So go ahead. You can share your screen, definitely.
Wait, how do I do that?
Um, uh, are you using Zoom in your computer?
Yes.
Okay. Let me allow you to share it. So click the share screen one here on Zoom at the bottom.
Screen share. Join audio, start video. Screen share. Yeah.
Yeah, and then click yeah, choose screen, and then start sharing. Yeah.
I don't know. Wait. Try. But I don't have that screen. It's not coming up here.
Okay. So when you click share screen, what do you see?
Give me a second.
Okay. So no problem, inshallah. Just take your time. We can do troubleshooting later, but I have to get to the next part of the lesson. Any troubleshooting we could do separate, inshallah. So just try your best if you want to follow.
Did you see?
Oh, I see now. Okay. So, so it came through my other screen. Let me just grab it. So now, open your terminal.
All right. Do you see my terminal?
Oh, it stopped sharing. Is it me? Oh, I see. Okay. So open your terminal. Do you have terminal? Do you have a Git bash?
Yeah.
Okay, open Git bash. Let's see.
So can you see my mouse right now?
Yeah, I can see it.
All right.
Okay.
Did you see it?
Yeah, I see that. So now, say ls. Okay, say ls. So we can see what's in there. I would say go to, okay, so cd say cd zacker. I think that's your computer. cd zacker. Because I see a folder called zacker, so I think that's your computer.
Where? Here?
At the top it says I see the blue one. At the last one it says zacker.
Okay.
Say enter. Okay. Now say ls. Okay, now you could go to desktop. So I think it's somewhere in here. Do you guys see desktop?
No.
Okay. So I think we went to the wrong maybe user. Maybe we should have went to all users and then went from there. But
Okay,
what you could do is close the whole terminal, close the whole Git bash. Can you right click in your folder here, this folder? Right click, open that folder and then right click it.
All right, what folder? I'm sorry.
The one that was just open. You had open.
The Git bash.
No, the folder you had. You just closed it. I think. The normal folder. Go to open any folder is fine. Just open any folder. Go to desktop. Click desktop on the left side, and then right click somewhere in the folder, an empty place. Click somewhere empty. Right click, and then say git bash here. Click git bash here. So now it's open in folder. It's open in desktop. So if you say you could also do that same thing if you go to other folders. So you just say right click, open git bash here. So now now you're good. You're in the desktop. So you say ls and you will find what are you looking for. So you see the folders that you have. Okay.
So folder. I don't.
Okay. So we have to get back to the lecture, but you could troubleshoot and inshallah.
Okay, yeah, I figured out. Yep.
If you have any issues, we can get back to it, and we'll have more time later when we finish it, inshallah. So let me get back to the lecture. Let me share my screen. All right. Let's go back to it. All right. Let's move this away. Okay. So now we understood what the terminal is, how to navigate it, things like that. So let me introduce GitHub. So GitHub, and when we finish with GitHub and set everything up, inshallah, we'll take a break before we get to CSS. But GitHub, go and create an account in GitHub. Go to github.com, create an account here, github.com. I'll share the link. So this is where you will be saving your code. This is where you'll be working. And GitHub is owned by Microsoft, so it's also free. So everything's free. Uh, so GitHub is this website. This is your profile. You have a repository. So repositories, just folders. So repository is the folders that you pushed to GitHub. So these folders are my folders. So these are the things I worked on, 138 things. And then there's also, right, if you go back to the profile, there's this chart. So this chart is sometimes what the recruiters and people who are hiring you, they look at this. The reason for that is if you see something that is dark, it means that you committed code a lot. So for this day, I committed like 25 times. I committed 28 times. If you see a gray one, that means you didn't commit any code. That means you weren't active. You weren't creating something. So if you have nothing, for example, start like on 2008 or something like that, basically that means you weren't active in coding. 2019, I was active. 2020, kind of active. So this is where they kind of like glance. It's not fair, but sometimes they have to evaluate you in a different ways. So when we're doing this over your time here, keep pushing code every day, and I'll ask you to do that. So most of the assignments are done in GitHub. So you'll have throughout the school you will be fine, but when you're done with the school, that's when you have to keep up and keep pushing code every day. So this is GitHub. So what we need to do is, let me go back to the lesson so we can follow the steps that we set up already. So if you go to the GitHub section right here, we have steps right here. So let's go here. Step one. So step one, what we're gonna do is we're gonna find the assignment. So step one, it says copy the assignment or fork it. So this is our assignment today. If we click it, it will take us to the assignment page. So this is the code for the assignment. So if you want to work on it, you will say fork first. So you fork it. I think I already forked it, so it will not allow me. But you will fork it. Fork means copy this code, this whole code right here, to my account in GitHub. So you will fork it. The next step you will do. So right here, let's go back to the steps now. So we forked it. Sorry, I'm going really fast. So we fork it, and the step two is it says your name should be on the front of the repo. So right here, this should be your name. So instead of Gabi School, it should say your name here, and then the file, the name of the file. So just like that. If it's not saying that, this folder, this code does not belong to you. So you cannot make any changes to it. So keep that in mind. It's just like a code bin when you're forking it. The next step is you add a group lead, or you add a collaborator. So that will probably be me for now. So to add that, you'll go to settings, and then you will go to manage access. So this is a person who will help you kind of like review your code. So you'll just here, you click add teams or people, and then you will type my name. So my name, my GitHub handle is Duran Ali, and then you'll find me right here. So when you click that, that means you could give me the access. So I'll say, I mean, it will not ask you this actually. This is just for my account, the Gabi School, but it will tell you, okay, we invited that person. Okay, so the next step would be to go ahead and let's see. So we did that. We invited the person. The next step is to clone. Clone means to copy the code. So you click your code to copy the code to your computer. So this is where we get into the Git code. So the Git commands. So to copy this, I remember Khadija was asking me. She was saying she was worried about the SSH, and she had a difficult with it. So we will not use SSH. So all you have to do is just take this URL. You could click here to copy, or you could just click it and right-click copy, and then you will go to the terminal. So the terminal, you have to be where you want to paste this code. So this code will basically just be pasted there. So now we're here. So we have to go to the right one. Let's go to CD. Let's go CD pictures. Let's CD to Gabi School. And let's cd to section 1, and then let's cd to day 1 or week 1. Ls, I think it's week 1. No, okay. So let's cd to the one we just created, which is CSS test. So now we will paste it here. So to paste it, or to get this code to your computer, you have to say git clone, and then you paste the line of that, the link, and you say paste. And now just go and kind of like do its stuff and grab that code from GitHub and put it in your computer. So now if we go ahead and open that folder, you will see that code there. So let's go to pictures, and let's go to Github school. So now we're gonna go to section 1, and then go to CSS test 2. As you can see here, it already created a folder for you. So this folder is from GitHub, and as you can see here, it has a folder called git that is kind of like grayed out. The reason for that is you're not supposed to touch that. So don't touch that. Don't change anything from it. Don't delete it. Just keep it there. So it is a way to keep track of your changes. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna open it with editor. I will say if you want editor, download VS Code or Visual Studio Code. This is one of the best editors right now. It might change, but right now, VS Code is the best one. I'll share the link. Download it. It's one of the best one. When you download it, we could open this folder in that. So, or you could just open it like right here. I saved it right here, but you have to look for it. You could open it, or you could just say right click, open with code, and that will open it. Another way to open it is by going to your terminal and cding into the folder that we just got, which was introduction to CSS, and then saying code dot. So this code dot will work only in Git Bash, which is this one in Windows. It will not work in Mac if you have a Mac. So we'll open it, and now it will open VS Code, so automatically. And you don't see that because it's in my second screen, but it is actually right here. Sorry about that. It's right here. So it opened it in the editor. So this is the editor. There's a lot going on, but the main thing you need to understand is the left side is your code. So these are your folders and files and things like that. And this side is where you will edit the stuff. So if we click the HTML one, so the HTML opens here, and you could edit your HTML. So the main thing that we need to understand right now is that we need to make changes to this code and submit it to GitHub. So how do you do that? So let's just add a little bit of text in here. We cannot do that because the reason for that is we actually cloned the wrong repository. So this is something to learn. I did the mistake, but you guys can learn from. We actually cloned the wrong repository because we cloned the one from Github school, not ours. So now if we make changes and submit it, it will make change to the main folder, the main Github school. I do have access to Github school, but you guys don't have access to Github school. So if you make changes and you submit it, it will just say, oh, somebody submitted a code. Do you want to merge? And I can accept or not. So now you didn't even submit it to your own account. So to change that, we'll have to go to here. Actually, we have to get a new thing because we already did this one. We have to get a new lesson. So let's just get this one, Introduction to JavaScript. Let's just say that. So what we will do is we'll go through the steps. We'll fork it first, and I'll choose my name. So it will fork. It will just copy the whole thing quickly to your name. So you'll find your name right here. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna add a collaborator. I will not add a collaborator, but that's how you'll add. The next step is collaborator. And if you're ever confused about these steps, I always add it in here in the README. So these are the steps. So see, fork, add collaborator, clone, all that stuff. So I always add it in every lesson. So you will memorize them, and you will be. So collaborator will be. So Zakaria said, "Who's collaborator?" So collaborator will be me. So it will be the person who's reviewing your code. So whenever you're working on this, find my name. So my name will be, my GitHub handle will be Duran Ali. I'll share that. Go here, settings, and manage access, and then put my name there and invite me to your code. So invite me right here, invite me, and I'll see your changes and things like that, and I could make a comment and things like that. So so when you invite me, after that you'll clone it. So just clone it. So we'll copy this link, and now we have to create a new place, new folder for it. So let's just go back. We could actually, no, it's fine. So we'll paste it right here actually. So let's say git clone and paste. So now we'll do its job and just go ahead and does that. And now we'll go to CD to introduction to JavaScript. And let's close this because we are not working on that one. Let's CD to let's code dot, which will open the editor with this, and it opened in the second screen. And okay, so now we could just make a small change and send it because it's in my account. It will not make it will not be a permanent change to the main repository. So now we'll say we made change live in lecture or something like that. So we will look for that change. So now if we save that change, what happens is Git will keep track of it. So Git will say, hey, so something changed. As you can see here, actually I have a extension that will tell me you have uncommitted changes. As you hear in my editor, it says a second ago, uncommitted change. You made change, but so I have an extension. I have a software within this editor that will keep track of any changes. So now if you want to commit that change, you could do two things. We could still use the terminal, but also this VS Code has its own terminal. So you just say here new terminal, and it will use Git bash. So it will use the same thing. So now what we could do is we could do two things, a couple of things. First thing we need to do is we need to create a new branch. Remember how I said Git is like a system, and there's a main account, there's a main code base. So now we're using the main code base. If we submit these changes, it will go to the main account and the main code base. We don't want that. So when you're working in real world, they will not allow you to do that. They will not allow you to just submit a code and change the main code. That will be against every company in the world. So they will tell you, hey, make your own branch and submit your code, so we can review your code and see if it's good. Then we can submit it for change. So to create your own branch, you say git checkout b. So this is a command that you could use and write it down anytime you want to create a new branch. So and you will be doing this all the time. So now we will create my own branch. So we'll say Duran Ali. So that's how you create your own branch. So if we say enter, it will change the main to my name right here. So now another thing we need to do is we need to add the changes. So the changes we just did, we need to add it to the Git system. To add it to the Git system, you say git add dot. The reason we say dot means all, so all changes. If we don't say dot, it will create an error. You have to either say dot or you have to say the file name. You have to say readme.md, add that file. But it's always easy to just say dot. Give it a space, say dot. It will say, okay, now you don't see any feedback, and that's a normal thing. If you want to find feedback, you say git status. So git status will give you a feedback. It will say, hey, on the branch, Duran Ali, changes to be committed. So you need to make a commit, and the changes are right here. So readme is the change you made. Now you have to commit it. So we have to do commit. So we say git commit. So these are commands you just memorize. So git commit and then -m, and then you have to make a comment about the commit. So always, if you don't make a comment, it will create an error. So always make a good comment. Say something like, I added text to the README. And this will help the next person. And this will show in the GitHub. It will say, okay, the changes you made, and what you made, and it will have the next person to know what you made, what changes you made. So now if we say git status, it will say, okay, no, nothing to change. Now we just have to send the code to GitHub. To send the code to GitHub, you say git push u origin, and then you create, then you name your branch. So now this basically means git push, and then u is a flag, and then origin. So these are just part of the Git system that I don't want to go deep into. And then you create your branch. So this is just the command that you will use. I would say just write it down somewhere, and it's also in the lecture, the writing. So you have everywhere. So now if we say that, it will just do its job and submit the changes. So now it will just say, okay, good, we made that change and we send it. You're good to go. If we go back to GitHub and we refresh it, it will say there is a new change. So it will say Duran Ali had recently pushed less than a minute ago, pushed the code less than a minute ago. And if you look at here, it will say 2 branches instead of 1 branch. So before it was 1 branch, it was the main one. And if we click that, you'll see Duran Ali branch. So the next step would be to create a pull request. And it's already telling you here, create a pull request. Pull request means, hey, I made change. I want to merge it to the main branch. Can you look at it? So that's basically what pull request means. So you could click here, create a pull request, or you could just click here, and it will take you a place to create a pull request. So pull requests, the next step is you have to make sure you don't choose the base repository. This will take you to will send your code to Github school repository, not your own repository. So change it to your own repository, which is right here. And then after that, you choose a reviewer. So right here, you choose a reviewer. So these are the steps, and I wrote down the steps in the writing. So choose a reviewer, and if I accepted your invitation, when you added me as a collaborator, you will see me here as a reviewer, and you just choose me, and then you say create a pull request. So if you say create pull request, now it will say, okay, you requested pull request. We don't see any conflict between the 2 branches, the main branch and your branch. If you're working with a team, sometimes you will see conflict. Conflict means you edited the same file as somebody else, and then you added the same thing but in a different way. So now you have to resolve the conflict, and there's a way to resolve it. And you will see this when you're working with a team. You see some conflicts here, and that's what I used to do a lot when I was working at the other school, the boot camp. I used to help the students resolve and resolve a branch or a conflict in GitHub. So and don't ever merge your own pull requests. So here's the warning. Actually, I put it right here in writing. It's a big warning, and actually it might actually cost your job in the future if you actually do not know how to do this. I put it here. Do not merge your own pull request. If you have the access to merge it, never merge it. You could actually get fired from a job if you merge. This means you're confident with your code, and now you don't see any problems. Now add it to the main branch, and now like it will become live. So a lot of companies, what they do is their main branch is connected to their website or their software. So now if you made changes and you merge the pull request to the main branch, that means that change will be live. It might break the software, it might cost them millions of dollars. So this is no. Don't ever merge your own pull request. For now, we're learning, so we should practice. So I mean, you can merge your own request, like if you're working your own thing, but it's a practice. It's good to practice, to wait somebody else to help you merge the pull request. So it's a no to ever merge your own pull request. It's against a lot of companies' rules, and it could get you fired right away. So just wait for me to make the merge, and I'll review your code, and you're good to go. And so that's the steps we need to go over when we're doing the GitHub and pull requests and all that stuff, and getting the code and pushing the code. The next thing you need to do is just send your form, just like we did last time, the daily reflection. But in the link in the URL place, you just copy your own URL here and you put it there. So that's how I will know where your code is. So that's a GitHub, that's a Git request and Git push. and the git pull and all that stuff. I'm sure that it's a lot of information. I'm sure you might not understand what is going on, but if you just practice, it will come to you. So do you guys have any question before we go to break? So is repo as same as that branch you made? Is same as that branch you made? Um, so repo is this whole folder, this whole file is a repo. So this whole thing right here is a repo or a repository. So you put your code here. That means this is your repository, but the branch is different. Branch is part of the Git. So branch is a way to keep track of the changes. So if you create a new branch, it means now you created a new change. So think of the Git as like a river. So if you have a river or a stream, they actually use that term. Stream is upstream, downstream. If you have a stream and there is a water that goes off that stream or the river, that is a branch. So that is a new line of that. So think of a new branch as a new code, but part of the main branch. So it's just, and later on you could merge it. So that's what I will do, merging it. That means you corrected the changes, now merge it. So repository is the whole thing. A branch is something that you create to make changes. Any other question you guys have? Anything you're confused about the GitHub and Git? And you could always follow these steps right here. So if you feel confused about anything, follow these steps. And I always add it in here, so you can see right here. I always add the steps right here. So it's in every README file. Okay, I see no more questions, so we'll go into break. We'll take 10-minute break. I'll go get some coffee, and I'll be back, inshallah. So see you guys in a little bit. 10-minute break. Okay, let's get back to it, inshallah. Okay, so let's get back. I got my coffee. I didn't have a coffee today, so I was trying to be strong. It didn't work out.
I just quit coffee, so I broke today after 26 days.
Oh, inshallah. That's good. That's good. You're lucky. I'm addicted to it. I don't know how to get out. But usually when you're doing a lot of coding and stuff, it helps. But eventually you get tired of it, health wise. So let's get back to it, inshallah. We'll start with CSS today. We'll introduce CSS. We learn the Git and GitHub and how it works and all that. We'll introduce CSS. So CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet, or it's Cascading Style Sheets. This basically means CSS is it has a property of cascading. Cascading, if you know the word, it means basically something that's kind of like falling, like a waterfall. So it has that property of it. The effect it comes from the top. So things happen from the top to bottom. So whatever at the bottom is the most important part. So if you have a element defined at the top, and then you define it again at the bottom, the one at the bottom will have priority. So so that's what CSS is. It's designed to make the pages look nice. It was created by this guy Hakam Wamli in 1994. There was other ways of styling the websites. HTML actually has its own way of styling websites, but it's very, very limited. You could make things bold, you could change the color, things like that, but you cannot style like tables and things like that with HTML. So this guy came up with it. So it has something called property and value, which we will see example right here. So so this is the syntax. This is how CSS looks like. First, you will make a selection. Most of you tried CSS a little bit. So you will have a selection. Selection is a selector is is the HTML element. So HTML element is the selector. You could select the P. You could select a class, a ID, and then you will define that that selector. So now what we basically saying is make this H1 the text, the color make it blue, and make the font size 12 pixels. So on pixels we will learn about the units and things like that in the next lecture. So this is how CSS looks like. You always have a property and you have a value. You always have a property and a value. So and there is a column in the middle, and then you have semicolon at the end. So so that's the selectors. So there are a few selectors in CSS. It's defined in different categories. One of the selectors is called universal selector. Universal selector is this asterisk. This means this asterisk selects everything. So everything in your website, in your page, this asterisk it has effect on. So it's you don't usually use it. You use it in very, very specific cases. There's also element type selectors, just like the one we just saw, the H1. Element type selectors are things like P, nav, header, H1, paragraph. There's UL2 here. So those are called element type selectors. There's also ID selector, which in CSS you define it as like the hashtag or the hash pound. And if you want to define it, you define it. We'll see example of it. You will say ID is equal to container, quote unquote container, just like right here. So you say ID is equal to container. So that's how you define. And then there's a class selectors. These are the categories of selectors. Class selectors, you define them by the dot. So, and if you want to define them in your HTML, you define it by class is equal to and then the name. So the good thing about classes is that you could define multiple classes in one go. So if you say box here, you could give it a space and write something else, and that would be another class. So That's what's good about classes, but IDs don't have that. You only define one ID at a time. Okay, so those are the selectors in general. Let's go and learn what the box model is. So we'll go to W3 Schools. I'll share this link. And you could always bookmark all the links I share so that you'll have a reference. So the box model, what is the box model? So it says here, all the HTML elements can be considered as boxes. In CSS, the term box model is used when talking about the design and the layout. The CSS box model is essentially a box that wraps around every HTML element. It consists of margin, border, padding, and the actual content. So the box model is that the whole website of if you build the CSS with a website or HTML, the whole website contains margin, border, padding, and then the content. So the content is your text, your images, anything. So that is the box model. Is, you know, everything in CSS and in HTML is has margin, border, and padding. A lot of times we can, if you go to the browser, you will see that by default, if you create a new website, by default it has a certain type of margin, certain type of padding, but you could make it so that it doesn't have that. So we'll see that as an example later on. So what does this, what are these mean? Like, what does margin, border, all this, what do they mean? So the margin means it's a clear area outside of the content. So outside of a content is a clear area or a transparent area outside of the content. So if you want to increase it, if you increase that, then you increase in the space outside of the content. Border means there is a border that you could define the properties of the border. You could define how thick it is here, the solidness. You could define the color of the border, and you could define you know, much more than that. I'll show you an example. Also, there's a padding. Padding, think of it as like when you're like packing something. So like Amazon, when they pack you a box, let's say it's an electronic device, and they don't want the electronic device to hit the walls of the box, so they put padding, they put stuff, styrofoam and things like that in the box, so that that thing doesn't move around and hit the wall when it's in the transportation. So padding is just like that. You don't want your content to hit the border, because it's gonna look interesting. Like, it's gonna look like there's no space. And a lot of times when you're trying to create something nice, you need to give it a breathing space. And you will see that in the flyers, in the design, UI and UX, all that stuff. You'll see that space is always good. It's called negative space. So it's always good to have that. So padding, it helps you with that. And we'll see how to do that. So let's see an example of this, actual example of the code. So in here, you will see that we have a box here. And this box is defined by the CSS. So this box has a div, and it's right here. This div right here is this box. So this box, we define it. We say the div has a background of light gray, which is right here. We say the width of this box is 300 pixels, and we say it has borders. It has a border, and the border has a 15 pixels of solidness. So this is 15 pixels, and also the color is green, and it's a solid. So there's different ways to actually define border. You could actually say here dashed, and it will show you. If you ever use like Microsoft Word back in the days, and you were designing your own flyers, that's where what you were playing around with, is the margin, the padding, the dashed, or the solid border. So on here you could change whatever you want. You can say blue if you want, and that will change it. So that's the border. You could play around with it and make it as thick as you want, or you could have no border. And if you do not want to have any border, you could just say 0 here, and it will say no border whatsoever. So it's not good to have border most of the time, because it kind of looks like you're kind of putting everything in a box. But when you need to have it, that's how you do it. And there is a padding. So the padding is right here. So this is space between the text and this border is 50 pixels. You could increase it. You can make it smaller. Let's make it uncomfortably smaller. Let's actually make it 0. So that's what I was talking about when I said pattern is good. It doesn't look good now. It looks like it's very squished and everything. It doesn't look nice. So it's always good to give a good pattern so that you have like a breathing space and it looks nicer to the eye. There's also margin. Margin is the outside. It's right here. So margin is the space outside. This is important because you don't want everything to be next to everything else. So if you put this 0, you'll see that this border will go right to the text. And I mean, like, it will go to the wall because this text has its own, I think, its own margin. It's not allowing for the box to come, but it's always it's right next to the wall, and you don't want that. So we'll say something like 50, and it gives that space. So that's the box model. That's how you define it. That's how you change it. Let's see more information about the box model. So there's a lot of things you could define about the box model, but the main thing to understand is that you have to keep in mind all these elements when you're trying to move things around. So that's the box model, and it's really, really important to understand what it is. Okay, so now we're gonna go and practice. We're gonna go practice how to add CSS to actual HTML file. So let's actually create a new file. We're gonna create a new website. Let's go here. Let's close this because this was the example that we were given when we were doing the Git. Let's open a folder. Let's go here. Let's go to section 1. And then let's create something like CSS lesson. So now we can open this in editor. It's going to be empty. Let me grab it. It's going to be empty. So if you want to create a new HTML web page, the first thing you need to do is you need to kind of organize your stuff. So we need to create folders, a folder for CSS, a folder for images, things like that. So now we could just go here and actually create the folder here. We could just say right click, new folder, and it's going to be the same as what I'm doing right now. So it's going to be the same. So let's create a folder here and say CSS. Let's create another folder called image. I will create a file called index.html. Usually when you're working with HTML, index is the default file that the browser is going to look for. So if you say something index, it means that's the default. So it's always good to start with index. So this is empty HTML. Let's add a CSS file in here. So we'll say styles.css. So we don't have anything right now. So we have we will add images and stuff like that. I already created something so we can save time. We have about close to like 40 minutes. I think so, like 48 minutes. So let's see. So I created something here. So the international. So I created a website called International Airport. I'll show you. International Airport. I think I showed you guys when we were doing the Fatima restaurant. I'm not sure, but I showed the example before. But this is this website basically shows. I think I'm mixing it with something else. But the main thing is we'll create something like this with the CSS we just learned, all the CSS that we just practiced, and the box model and things like that. We will create something like this in a minute. So first thing we will do is we'll go over the HTML. So let me just copy the HTML because the HTML is basic and it's just the text. It's just like the Fatima restaurant. So this is the HTML. So the HTML has the doc type here at the top. Let me just zoom in. It has the doc type, and the doc type basically says this is an HTML file, but the doc type only is defined in HTML5. So if you say doc type and HTML, this means this file is HTML5. So it actually says this is not an HTML, it says the opposite. So, and then we'll just start with the HTML. We'll close that at the bottom here, the HTML tag. We'll create the header, and then we'll create the title. So title says International Airport. We have some tags here. We could actually get rid of this. You don't have to. And this meta tag is used when you're using it for like responsive, like mobile. So we could get rid of it. We don't even need it right now. You will learn it in the next lesson when we're talking about responsive stuff. So now we link our CSS to we'll link our CSS to the HTML. So this is how you link it. So you say link rel style sheet. So you basically telling the browser, okay, this is going to be a style sheet. There's going to be a CSS, and then you will give it a link. So the link would be the file that we have in the CSS. This is S. So let's save that. Right now, if we open it, nothing will happen. It's not gonna look good because we don't even have the images. We don't have the CSS. It's gonna look very empty. It's gonna look like that. So now let's go back to the editor and let's add some CSS. First, let me just copy the images so that we have everything ready. Let me just go. Let me open that folder. Let's go to here. Let's go full time. Week 1, day 1. I think it's day day 1. Could be this one. Yeah, it's this one. So it's just this image. So let me go back and add that to what we're working on right now, which is a CSS lesson. So that it looks that we see the image there. So so now if we open that, refresh it, you will not see the image because it's not linked properly. Let me see. So the image is right here. Image. It says different name. Okay. Let me just grab that. So it should show now. Okay, it's too big, but it's fine. We'll define it so that it looks nicer. So this is our HTML. We have sections just like the last lesson. We have a couple of sections. We have the main right here. This main section is going to be a couple of boxes of text. So we will see that how that works out. And also we have the footer. So that's pretty much it. And we have another section here where there's a copyright. So now let's open our CSS. The first thing we will do is I'll go to our website called, actually we just write it. It will say CSS reset. There's a website where you could grab the reset. So reset, let me explain what reset is. So CSS reset is a bunch of CSS right here that you could put in any project you're working on. Before you start a project, you'll just grab the CSS reset because the browser actually adds a default CSS to your website. So it adds a padding, it adds other things. So to just not worry about that when you're working on your code, you always should have the CSS reset. So I'll share this link, bookmark it so that when you're working on a new application, a new website, you could put your CSS reset. So I'll just copy this and paste it right here at the top of the CSS, and then you just ignore it. So you will just I usually just put a comment here. I'll put a comment that say end of reset, so I don't have to worry about it, and it's not going to interfere in my my other CSS. So now if we go back and see how the file looks like, it's going to look the same. There's not going to be a difference, but we removed all the default that was given by the browser. All right, so now let's add the CSS, and I'm gonna reference this right here. Let's add it. So we're gonna work on step by step. I'll add a couple of CSS, and it's called the default CSS. So this is the ones that that every file will have, not every file, but every element in this project will have. So it's gonna be the body. So we're gonna have, let's just go back. Sorry about this. So we're gonna have the body. So we're gonna just say the body should have the width of 1280 pixels. It should be centered. We will have this font. as a default. We'll create something called box sizing. We'll explain box sizing when we get to the responsive part of the CSS. We also say that any paragraph should have the font size of this and should have line height of this, and also all the headers should have this. So if we save that now and we go back here, there should be some changes, but not major changes. So as you can see, all the headers became the same size. All right, so now we'll just go ahead and code out the rest of the CSS. Okay, so let's go back to the HTML. Let's go back to the HTML. We'll start with the navigation. We'll start with this, the nav part. So this one. So we'll start with this section, the navigation. So this is the title of the website, and this is the navigation. So we'll start with this class. So we combined the title and and also the links to the homepage and things like that as a nav, class nav. So let's just say nav here, and we'll give this a height of 70 pixels. We'll also have a width of 100%. 100%. We will add a background. I think you've seen the original. It had a background when we were background color. Let's say it's going to be the same if you say background or background color. Let's make it something like 5. Let's say 5-4. 5-4, 5-4, 5-4. That's going to be kind of a blue, I think. Let's see. And then we say position relative. So now if we go back and we check out the menu here, it's going to be a little bit different. So as you can see that, let me change the colors, not blue. 5-4. Actually, first let's actually go through the color. Let me explain a little bit about the color so that you know what these are. What is this? What does that even mean? So I actually had it prepared here. So colors are really important in CSS. They we talked about a little bit in the HTML. They make the website or they break the website. So colors are important. There are two types of ways to define colors. There's a couple of ways to define, but the main ones that most people use are RGB and hex. So RGB. So let me ask, what does RGB stand for? Do you guys know what RGB stands for? RGB.
Red, green, and blue.
Red, green, and blue. Right. So red, green, and blue. So every color in your computer and in the websites is a mix of red, green, and blue. So just keep that in mind. That's kind of like a fact. So it's a mix of red, green, and blue. There's a different hues. There's different variation. But computers understand red, green, and blue. And even if you're in the printing world and if you're in the graphic design world, you see that. So red, green, and blue. So let's go here. Red, green, blue. Red, green, blue. So the way you define it is by saying RGB. So right here when we were doing this, instead of doing that, you will say RGB, and then you'll define the property of the red, green, blue. So each one of them, it has a number. 255 is the max of that color. So if we just say make these 0 and you have this, let me share this link. It's a nice website where you could like play around with the colors. So the red is 255. If you make this 0, this is pure red. And if you make this less, if you make all of them 0, you have black. What do you guys think? If I make all of them full, what's gonna happen? What color do we get? What do you guys think? Right, white. So it's the opposite. So if we make all of them like that, so you got white. So just like that, mix of red and green is yellow. So you basically kind of like play around with it like that. So yeah, so this is what red, green, blue means. And if we want to define it, we just go to our CSS. Instead of using this, we can just delete it and say RGB, and then define the color. So let's say we want to make it red. We say 255, 0, and 0. Now, if we go back to the background of the website we're working on, it becomes red, as you can see. So that's how you could define the RGB. So now there is also hex. So hex is like this. Hex is exactly the same as RGB. The only difference is how it's defined, how it looks like. You define it by the hashtag, the hash pound, and then you have 6 characters, the letters and numbers. So these 6 characters, the first 2 characters define the red, the second 2 characters define the green, and the last ones are the blue. So now if we just play around with the dial, as you can see, it's exactly the same as the RGB, just this different. So there are a lot of websites where you could actually find the RGB, and you could just say something like pink RGB, and not RGB, pink hex, and pink hex will come to you. So you will find a number of that color. So it's really nice, and it's nice to use. So let's define the hex. Most of the time you'll see hex. Hex is the one that people use the most. So let's say 5.4, the one I already defined, 5.7, and E7. So this is the one that I have in my notes. As you can see, like that. Okay, so the next thing we will define is the header nav. So right here, if we go back to we'll define this section. So this section will define this CSS nav header. So we'll say dot nav, and this is what I talked about at the beginning, the nesting of adding like a child element into CSS. So we did actually talk about at the beginning of our lesson. If we go back, you will see that when we started the CSS, we talked about right here selectors. Oh, actually, sorry, we didn't talk about it. It's another lesson. I'm mixing with another lesson, but basically, this means you're going. This is the parent, and then you say, okay, I need to find the child of that parent. So so this is the parent, and the child is this. So we'll say nav header. We'll learn that another time how that is related. So we'll say display inline. Okay, so now every time we go to something, we have to kind of explain it a little bit. There's also display in CSS. We might go over time a little bit, but it's good to understand everything. So display is a really, really important aspect of CSS. I know everything is really important, but display is one of the core things of CSS. So display has, originally it had 2 properties. It has block and inline. So let's actually just read the description of this W3 schools. It says a block level element. A block level element always starts in a new line and takes up a full width available. So it kind of like stretches itself. So some of the block elements are div, and h1, header 1, paragraph. These are all block. It means they don't allow you to have a space. They don't allow you to have another space. So they just take the whole width of the website. So I can show you example of how that works out. So if we go to the tryout here, and we define, so this is li, so it's a list. So this is a list. If we make this list a block, each one of them will take the whole space. So it will become like just a normal list. So if we say block, they will become a list. So this means this HTML list, which is right here, is taking this whole line. It's not allowing anything else to come in. So it's taking this whole line. So it's kind of like saying, okay, I need to take the whole space. So that's block. That's the difference between block and inline. Inline means it allows you to have a space. It allows you to add something else. So inline, an inline element does not start a new line and only takes up as much width as necessary. So it takes as much width as necessary. So these are some of the inline elements in CSS: span, the anchor, the link, and then the image tag. So those are the ones. And then there's display none. Display none means do not show. So now if we go back to the editor that we're just doing, if we say none here, what do you guys think is gonna happen if I say run? What do you guys think?
It's gonna be a block.
Okay, So if I say display none to this list, so it's gonna affect every element, these 3 elements. What do you
Will it
think?
delete all of them?
So as I
It
said,
will not show.
none.
They're
So,
gonna disappear.
Yeah, they will disappear.
okay. So if I say none means just make it disappear. So none means basically remove it completely. So if we go to the description of a W3 schools, it says display none is commonly used with the JavaScript to hide and show elements without deleting. So display none will come important when we get to JavaScript. But for now, display none means do not show anything. So most of the time you don't have any use in HTML and CSS. But when you're creating a condition and saying, okay, if someone clicks this, show this. If they don't click it, show this. Then that's when you use a display none. So those are the displays. Let's go back to our actual project. So we say display inline. So what does that mean? What does this element do? So this is the inline. So what is it supposed to do now that we said display inline? What do you guys think?
Show them all together.
Okay, so that's good. So it allows this section to come to the same line. So if it was a block, and remember, div has a default block, and the div is a default block. So now we change it to inline. That means this section is saying, okay, let's have the same line together. So I'll show you the website. The logo was one side, and the navigation was one side. So now what we're basically saying is, okay, let's put them in one line. So now that's what it does. All right. So we understand what display is in a nutshell. We'll explain it more in the future. Next thing we'll describe is the title. We just put a little bit of CSS in the title. So we'll nest this too. We'll say nav. We'll say that, and then we'll say nav header, and then we'll define the title. So we'll say nav title, and nav title is described here. So it's this div. So everything is nested. So it's this international airport. So the CSS we're doing right now is that. So title. Okay. Let's see. All right. So now let's add some CSS to the title. We'll say display inline block. So inline block is same as inline. And then we'll say font size, because it's the whole title. So we need to be a little bit bigger. We want to change the color to white. I'm gonna go a little bit faster from now on, unless we have something I have to explain, because we don't have a lot of time. We have to finish it by 8:30. So we'll define the pattern. Remember, we said the pattern is. Who can tell me what the pattern is from our box model? What does it do?
The space inside the box.
Okay, the space inside the box. So right now what we're describing is this international, and this is the cover of that international, the element that surrounds it. So it's basically saying, okay, give a space between this section and this section. So it's gonna give a space between this header and this. So it's gonna give it a little more breathing room. So now we're just gonna add a couple of elements. Another thing that we haven't actually touched when it comes to padding that I skipped is that when it comes to padding, you have to know. So what I'm gonna do is right now is I'm gonna add the properties of this this pattern. So you will see what I mean by something we haven't talked about. So pixels and 200 pixels. So let's explain what this means, and let's go to W3 schools. They explain it visually better. So let's go to padding here. So padding is the space around the content. We explained that. So padding has top, has a right, has a bottom, and has left. So let me share this, and this will be something that you have to remember for padding and for margin. It's kind of like a tricky thing to kind of remember that I just had one line here that said 15, 10, 13. So what this means is that the 15 is the top, this one is the right, the third one is the bottom, and the last one is the left. The way I remember this is by saying it's a clockwise. So starting from the clock 1, and then just go in. So one is top. So the first one is the top, and the right of the clock. So you just go clockwise. The right one is the second one, and the bottom is the third one, and the left one is the last one. So so right here, as you can see, and you could also break it up. So you could just say, just put it like that. So we can just copy this to show you example. So instead of saying this, you could just change that to this. So you could break it apart and say whatever way is easy for you. If you don't remember the top, the bottom, all that stuff, you could define each one of them in one line, or you could just put them all of them in this line. So that's different ways. Margin is exactly the same. The margin is exactly the same. So it has a top, right, bottom, and left. So it's exactly the same way, the clockwise, like that. So just remember that, take a note about it, and it will help you in the future, definitely. Okay, so now we define the title. Let's see the changes that happened. As you can see, it's white and it's a little bit bigger. All right. Another thing we need to define is, did we forget something? No. Another thing we need to define is, we define the title. We need to define the links to the navigation. So to do that, we need to go to the HTML and define this. So what is this? So let's say dot nav, and then parent dot nav links. So this we will say display inline, because we want it to be in the same line as the logo, and then we will say float right. Why? What do you guys think? Why do we say float right? This section. Why do we say float right? What do you think?
I will move to the right side.
Okay, good. So what are we doing is, we're basically bringing this navigation. Let me zoom in the whole thing. We're bringing this navigation, these buttons or these links, to right next to the International Airport logo. So if we want it to be right next to it, it will be right next to here. So we don't want that. We want it to be to the right. So we say float right, move to the right. So that's what float right means. Okay. So, and then we will say font size. We'll give it font size of 18 pixels. I will give it a padding. It's going to be similar to the top one, but it's going to be a little bit different. So we'll say 7 pixels, 200 pixels, 10 pixels, and 10 pixels. Okay. Who can tell me what the 200 is? What direction is that?
Right side.
Right.
The right side. Yes. So clockwise. So top, right. So it's good. You guys are learning fast, mashallah. All right. Let's go to let's describe the link. So this link, specific link, let's describe them and how they should look like. So I'll just say I'll copy this so that we don't have to rewrite it again. And then we'll say A. We'll say A, and then we'll just open it. So A is the link. So let's see. Okay. So we'll say display inline block. We'll give it a padding itself, and we'll make the padding 13 pixels, 10 pixels, 13, and then 10. So it's just the opposite of each other. So okay, and then we'll give it a text decoration. The reason we're giving text decoration none is because each link has underlining. So we want to get rid of that underline, and then we'll change the color to something like EF. Okay, so let's see how that looks like. So as you can see, it looks much better. It looks like a normal navigation. Let's change the hover quickly. It's not necessary to add a hover, but it's for effect. So let's just make it look nice. Let's add a hover. So hover is called pseudo class. So hover is a user effect pseudo class. You will learn this, I think, in the next lesson. But it's called pseudo class. Just it means if you want to hover over this element, then you will apply the CSS. So every time you hover over and you put your mouse on top of it, this will happen. This CSS will happen. So we'll set up the background to RGB this time. So we'll use RGB just to switch things around. We'll say, okay, so we'll say something like, let's just make black RGB. So now if we go back to here and we refresh it and you hover over it, it gives you that nice effect. Okay, so now let's define the image. So the image here, we have to make it smaller. It's way too big. So let's say image. So image is not a class, so we can define it by itself as an element. So we'll say max width. Let's make it 100%. Let's give it a height of auto. So it nicely fits the whole area. So as you can see, it nicely fits here. So that's the image. Let's add something to let's figure out the content. So the content here, right here, let's define it and make it look nicer. We have about 15 minutes, so let's just finish it up quickly. We don't have a lot left. We have just the content and the footer left. So let's see. Let's put. We have a class here defined already for us. So we have a class called top content. So we'll just say dot top content, and we will add a text align, and we'll add a center. We'll add a background color of EF, and we'll add padding of 80 pixels. We're just defining how the content is going to look like, the background of the content. We'll add a margin bottom of 30 pixels. So now if we go to here and refresh it, you will see that this will change, as you can see. So we added margin and we added padding, a lot of padding. As you can see here, 80 pixels of padding on all sides. So usually when you define a padding and you don't define the sides, it means apply this to all the sides, top, right, left, right, and bottom. So that's good. Okay, let's define the button. This button, let's change it. So the button has a long CSS, so I'm gonna copy that since we don't have a lot of time. So it looks nicer, but I'll explain what that means. So we say dot top content, and then we'll say button, and then we'll just paste that. So basically what this is, it says give the background of this color to the button. Don't give it borders. Give it a border radius, which we didn't talk about. Border radius is the roundness of the edges. So let's actually quickly touch on that. So if we go to buttons in here, where are the buttons? We could put here W3 schools buttons. And I'll show you what does that mean. CSS buttons, I mean. So you could define the edge of the button. So you see these buttons are sharp, right? So if we now try to edit it and change the border radius, so now there's no border radius here. We can add a border radius here, border radius, and define it. If we say 10 pixels, you'll see that you'll see roundness around there. See, so it looks nice. So another way to use border radius, if you say 50% border radius, that means it's a circle. It just becomes a circle. I mean, it's oval now because there's text in there, but if you remove the text, it becomes a circle. So that's kind of oval now still, but there's a way to make it fully circle. So border radius adds edges, adds a little roundness to the edges. Color is the text of the color. Text align, it aligns the text in the middle. Text decoration, we touch on that. display. We touch on that tag, font, all this. And the cursor one, it means that when I put over my my mouse, make it so that it looks like I'm clicking it. So I'll show you how it looks like. So now it looks like this. It doesn't look any good. If we click it, it looks nice. See? So if I put my mouse over it, it looks like it needs to be clicked, but it's really not a link. It's not a link. So that's what the cursor pointer helps us with. So everything looks nice so far. The only thing left is this section. And we could define it. Let me see how long we can. It's not going to take long. So let's just quickly define this whole section. So we're going to define this. This is one card. Imagine this is a card, and this is another card. And this is the third one. So we want to put them right next to each other. And to do this in just pure CSS, it's usually kind of confusing. It's not good. Later on, when you learn responsiveness, you will learn something called Flexbox, and it will make it much, much easier for you to do that. But let's actually define that so we can make it look nice. So if we look at the HTML, this has a main property. So let's define that main property, main, and we will add padding of we'll add padding of, let's say, 32 pixels or something like that. I wanted to add 2 rim because I have like that in my in my notes, but you guys didn't learn what the rim and all that means. So we'll say 2 rim is equal to I think 32 pixels. And then we'll add so that was the main one. Now we have this property which covers this whole area, all of them. So we'll have the class card card row. So we'll say dot card row. We'll give this we'll give width of 100%. So we want all of them to take the same, the whole space. Then we will define each one of them. So each one of them has, actually each one of them has card. So our card class. So let's define that card. And let's give a couple of properties that to help us put right next to each other. So now they're like on top of each other, stacked. We want them to be like each one of them to be on one side to side next to each other. So we'll say display table cell. So table cell is normal table in CSS, but it's kind of obsolete. Nobody uses it anymore. It's used only in like the most like old websites. But the reason we use it now is because we don't want to use something like Flexbox or something like that, because you guys didn't reach there. So for now, if you want to put something next to each other, you use something like table cell. And we'll define the min height, 150 pixels. We'll define the min width. We'll say 300 pixels, and we'll define the margin left. We'll say 8 pixels. Now, now this should make it so that they're all right next to each other instead of stacked. So as you can see, looks nice. So we have these cards. So let's just define one more thing, which is the content, which is the paragraph, like not the paragraph. It's the content card. So it's each one of them the content. So we just add one more element to it. We'll say dot card content. We'll say padding. We'll give it padding of 20 pixels. And then we could define the links if we want, but we don't have a lot of time. So the links will just stay there, same, like that. Let's define, okay, so now we're done with that section. We only have the footer left. So the footer is this section. So let's quickly define the footer. We have a couple of minutes, and then after that, we'll take questions, and inshallah, we'll conclude it. The footer section. So the footer, let's define the footer. So we say dot footer. The reason we say that, we could also just say footer. We could just use the footer element, but we define it in a div. So sometimes you might not have the footer itself. You could put footer here instead of div, but it's going to be the same. So we say footer, we say width, 100%, 100%. We'll give something called white space. You don't need to know right now. It's something that will come on next lesson or the lesson after that. Something you will understand what it means. Background, we'll give a background of the top, the one we defined already, like that. And then we will define. So now, if we say that, if we save it, you'll see that it gives it a nice background. But there's a lot more that we need to do. So now we'll define the inner footer, which is this one. This is the inner footer. So we want to give it like padding and things like that. So inner footer. Let's give it a width of 95%. Let's give it a margin of auto, and let's give it a padding of 30 pixels and 10 pixels. Okay, so here's another question. I put two numbers in the padding. What does this mean? What do they affect? Do they affect the top, right, left? What do they affect? What do you guys think?
Yeah, it should be only top and bottom.
Top and bottom?
I don't think. No.
You think the first one is the top and then this one is the bottom?
Top and right.
I think it affects all of them. It's a top, bottom, and left and right.
Okay, I see. Abdullah said both. Ahmed Abdullah. Okay. So how does it affect all of them? And is this the top or is this the sides? Which one is the? What do you guys think?
I think the first one is top and bottom. The second one is right and left. So what?
Okay, good, mashallah. So that's how it affects it. Yeah, you're right. So this is top and bottom, and this is a right and left. So it's kind of like combining two of them. So you take the right and left, and you take the top and bottom, and you combine them. So if you ever see that, that's what it means. So this is the top and bottom. This is right and left. Good job, guys. Taking
What
note.
about 3?
If you make it 3, then it goes to the normal way. So it goes to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just then that means you have one side that's not affected yet. So it goes to the normal way. Okay, so we defined the inner footer, which is this one, which is which affects all of them. Now we need to define each one of them. Footer item. So we say dot footer item. And we just need to add a couple of things. We need to add display. The reason we add in display here is because we want things to be next to each other or have some space. So we say inline block. We'll give a width of 50%. And we'll give a padding of 10 pixels and to 20 pixels. We'll also give a box sizing of border box, and we will learn this later, another time, another lesson. Border box. We'll also give a color of white. So one thing you could do is you could actually, if you have white or black, you don't have to define all of it. You could just say FFF, that's white, and 000 is black. You could make them 6 or you could make them 3. So FFF. Another thing we need to define is the paragraph. So this one, we need to define the colors and things like that. So now if we go back and see, it's almost done. It's almost done, but there's one more thing left, just how it looks, the color and things like that. So we'll say dot footer items. Actually, this should be items, not item. Sorry, that's why I didn't see the effect. So now we should see some effect. So you see, so it looks nicer. So I was confused of why it's not showing. So we say that footer items, and then we define the paragraph. We'll give it font size of 16 pixels. Text align. We'll say justify. And justify helps you with. I think we explained in the last lesson. it makes the text fit in the whole space, just like Microsoft Word. Line height, we'll see 25 pixels, and this one will say color, we'll say white. All right, so now that's one more thing left, two more things. We'll define the title. We'll say .footer items h1, and then we'll just give it color of white, FFF. And the last thing is the bottom one. It's this one all the way to the bottom. So that one will just give it footer bottom. We'll give it a padding of 10 pixels. We'll give it a background color of sort of black, 00, 12, 1p. We'll give it a color of white. And then we'll give it font size of 12 pixels, kind of make it smaller. Guys, let me know if I mess something up. I'm typing it quicker. Align center. So now everything should look good. So now, as you can see, yeah, the copyright is done. The menu, the top menu is done, and this all looks nice. So yeah, so that's kind of like the things you have to go through if you want to create a HTML file and a CSS web page that is basic. In the future, we will use something a little more advanced and make your job much easier without you writing all this inline block and all this stuff. Defining percentage and all this we'll get rid of when we get to Fluxbox. But for now, you just have to do it manually so that you feel the pain, and then later you'll appreciate it, inshallah. So that's it. Do you guys have any question about what we did now? CSS, padding, box model, all that stuff. Any questions? Anything you're confused about? Okay. So let me know if you have any question. Let me just go through the today's assignment and tomorrow's assignment. Okay, somebody raised their hand. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mohammed. You can talk.
Yeah, I have a question regarding the CSS when you were doing now.
Mm-hmm.
The part like when you were doing the nav, you were using like greater sign. So is that like when there's like a child involved? Is that how you describe to use that greater sign and then put dot and then go from there?
Yes. So in general, in HTML and even in all web design, you always find something called child and parent elements. And we will get this into when we get to JavaScript. There's something called DOM. The whole browser is built in like tree, and the tree has like branches. It has it has layers. So the HTML is just like that. It's kind of like a tree. And it has layers. So the top layer is this file, the HTML. There's also a child element of head, and then there's a parent child, and these also have their own children. So it's just like a descendant of family. So this has this. So these are siblings if you think about it. So these two are siblings because they don't go within each other. So the baddie has head as a child, and then if you click it, it will show you the last one for this editor. So this is a child. Image is another child. So image and header are children, are siblings. Section is another sibling, another child. So just like that, the class for the CSS, you could use this, the greater sign, to kind of indicate that the nav header is the child of nav. And we can see it right here. This is the class nav header, and the child is nav header. Does that explain a little bit more?
Yeah, very good. One more question. I downloaded the VS Code, and at the beginning it says like welcome home and untitled. So like how I'm gonna able to create a folder or a file?
Okay, so let me quickly start from the beginning. So let me just close. Let me put this one down, and let me just open the VS Code by itself. It might open with something. Let me just see. It usually opens with like last project or something like that. But if it opens with nothing, then I'll show you where you're at. So let's give it a second for it to open. I have about 3 VS Code to open, so it's kind of slowing down the computer. So this is what it gives you. Welcome, start, da da da, all this information, all that stuff. You could just close this welcome, just like that. Go to file, and then open folder. So this is, if you wanna start a new folder, you could start a new folder, but you could also go to your Windows. Let's say you want to desktop or something, create a new folder. So let's say we go to here in Github School. If we want to create a new folder, we just say right click, new, and then folder, and then we give it a name, test. So now we have that test folder. If we want to open it in VS Code, we say file, open folder, and then we target there. We just go right into, let's say, pictures, where it was. We go to Github School right here, and then we go to test. And then when you open it and you say select, then it will open that. It will open the folder for you. So now you could just create whatever you want here and put it in this folder. Does that help?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. So that's any questions you guys have? Any other questions?
Yeah. For the divs, are they essentially like boxes where you open a div and then you open another div
Yes.
and then you define it later?
So the div is a generic element. So the div it could be anything. So div doesn't mean anything. It just means a section. So it means something that you use to kind of like combine things. So if you want to combine, let's say the logo and the navigation, you use div. And if you click here, you see the closing div is right here. So div means it's just a container of something. So, but you don't have to define this. I define this so that we could like have things next to each other, but you could just get rid of this this div. You don't have to have too many divs, and get rid of this one too, and have just basically just 2 div, something like that, and make this one like h1, something like that. So you don't have to have all these nested divs. You could have just 2 divs and then have like h1 and then paragraph, things like that. So div is just optional. It's nothing. It means just a section. So don't confuse with anything. If you have a div, make sure you have a class most of the time, or you have an ID. The reason for that is if you define div here in CSS, it's gonna affect every div, every division or div. So it's gonna affect every div that you created. So usually you give it a class. If you have a general one, you usually give it like container. So it covers everything. So divs usually are just a way to organize your HTML. So I hope that
Okay.
helps.
Yeah, it does.
I see a question in Slack. I think I answered this one. Where can we get the link of the assignment to which we supposed to put in daily reflection form? Okay, I'll explain that in a second. I'll show the assignment and all that. Okay, so yeah, same question. All right, so let's go to the assignment for today, so I can explain. Let me know if you have any question. You could write it, or you could just raise your hand. Anything. Let's go to right here to the assignment. So the assignment today is this one. If you go all the way to the bottom, actually, let me log in back. Okay, let's go back here. Day 2. If you go all the way to the bottom, you will see that it has this CSS thing. So if you click that, it will take you to GitHub. And now this is your assignment for today. What you need to do is you need to read the description. So this is the README file. Make sure you read every word so that you don't miss out something. So the first task is to do the GitHub setup and all that. The next thing is to do the minimum viable product. So this is what you need to do to pass this assignment for tomorrow. So I will look into all this. So each step, and if you did that, then you're good to go. What you need to do is you need to go to here and see this image right here. Look at this image. You worked on the Fatima restaurant as a HTML. Now this is your the next step. This is what you need to do. So tomorrow, this is your job. This is the image, so you will not find the code in here. So this is basic image. And make sure you copy your code from the Fatima restaurant that you created in CodeBin, and put it in right here in this index.html. So put it right here. So to get started, I actually already put something for you, but you could just get rid of this and put your own if you want. So make sure you link your CSS. You create the exact same thing we did. Create a folder for CSS, link to it, all that stuff, and then follow this design. I've seen students who just did their own stuff, but make sure you follow this design, because I did it on purpose for you to practice what we actually talked about. Remember, we talked about how to put things next to each other. We talked about padding. We talked about all that stuff and colors. So practice that and try to make it as close as possible. If you cannot make it, that's fine. Just make sure you get close as you can. So that's the main thing. So go ahead and when you're doing your assignment, fork this. So click fork and put it in your thing, clone it, and add me as a collaborator, and then just start working on it. Follow the steps of the Git I taught you, and it's in here as a description. And then inshallah push your code and create a pull request, and then take this link right here, go to here and go to your daily form right here. My mouse is lost in another screen. Go to your daily form and put that link right there. So just right here, daily form, and then you put the GitHub link in the daily form. So that's after you push your code and you're done with it and you finished it. So it's kind of loading still, but yeah. So I hope you guys understand. Do you guys have any question of how to submit your assignment? You put your link here. Any question about submitting the assignment, working on the Git? Make sure you watch the video. It's recorded, and I'll post it in a little bit. Follow these steps in this description. You have a lot of resources. I put instructions right here, so you will not miss that. So if something doesn't work out, let me know. Where did I get that link from? I get it from right here in my GitHub. So I just copied this right here and I put it right here. So submit your form after you finished, after you pushed, and it should show. Now it shows here the branch. It shows a main. This should show your name too. So right here it shows main. It should show your name. So it should say something like Hebel dash Hebel. So it should say your first name and then dash your last name. And that will be your branch. So try that your best and do your best. You have tonight, starting from now till 10, and then you have from tomorrow 6 p.m. to you have 9:30. So we'll have a stand up at 9:30 and answer all your questions, anything you have. Any other questions you guys have?
I have a question, Ustad.
Go ahead.
Like normally when you're doing the CSS and the HTML as well, like when you're using the classes,
Mm-hmm.
The choices for the name classes, is it like open choices? You can name whatever you want the classes, or is it
Yeah.
something like fix it? What is it like?
Yeah, usually it's optional. So this
Okay.
class that you can name it whatever you want, but usually make sure it's sort of descriptive. Make sure it is it kind of like tells,
Something relative.
yeah, something relative. Like, so this is a content, you say top content. This is the links, you say nav links. This was supposed to be navigation, you say nav. So on the footer also the same, you say footer. And I said this one inner footer, it means inside the footer. And I said this one footer item because it's one item of the footer. So you describe it the way that you think it's best. Don't put a space between a class. If you do that, if you do items, that means you have two classes now. And actually, it might not actually even work. So make sure you always either connected like that or you have like that. And don't put dot in between them. That will not work. So either dash or just have them next to each other. So that's usually how you define the class. So it's optional. It's just whatever you want. You want to call it.
Okay.
Yep. Any other question before we close out? Let me check Slack. Okay. I've answered those questions. Okay. We'll conclude it here, inshallah. And it was nice having you guys going over this CSS. This is just the beginning. We have much more coming, but make sure that you take one step at a time. Don't look forward to the next lesson. And like, if you want to look forward, it's fine. If you finish this one and you're really good at this, then go ahead. But don't worry about the next lesson. Don't worry about the last lesson. Focus on this lesson. Try your best to kind of like perfect it. Do your best. This is a marathon, as I said. So it's just a step at a time. And before you know it, you will see your knowledge combined. Your knowledge is growing, and you see yourself as a developer. So just do your best, and I will see you tomorrow, guys. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.
You're welcome, brother.